Thank you, and particularly thank you for people joining us online. Hello, and then those here in the audience. So this is a workshop, so I wanted to first of all thank you to the School of Chinese and the University of Hong Kong for hosting me and the program, of course, for their generosity in giving us snacks and things like this. And Xiaofang, of course, for help and guidance. She saw me put together this book and many of the ideas through here. And then my contributor to the book is a colleague of mine called Dr. Kelly Frost. She also helped in a series of conversations and wrote one of the chapters in the book, and I just want to. And again, thank you for coming today, and thank you very much for joining us online. And just a quick overview. So first of all, just a very brief history of language program evaluation, the current state of the field, and then some focus on design as a way forward. And I'll explain that, this kind of design thinking that I got into. And then the four designs we're going to look at are tied to theoretical positions, actually. Post-positivism, pragmatism or pragmatic designs, constructivist designs, and then transformative designs. And hopefully many of you are familiar with these terms, and I'll help you with those. But the different philosophical traditions or design features that we can use to approach the way we improve language programming. And I'll keep going there. This workshop comes out of a book that I recently authored, and then again, Kelly Frost put in one chapter, contributed, but it's called Designs for Language Program Evaluation. It was published from Palgrave Macmillan, which is a part of Springer, which I've also published a few books with them. And the reason I went with Palgrave Macmillan was potentially if I had to use material from previous books, which it turns out I didn't. But our core today is how can language programs adopt concepts and techniques from mainstream program evaluation to help us improve. Again, I'll keep talking about this. Hello. Please come. Just getting started. So, again, the motivation for the book was how can we really start to improve our language programs? What many of us in this room are used to right now, language learning and language testing are multi-billion-dollar industries. And I can provocatively say we do little to improve them. We improve methodologies, we improve research, we improve our technologies, but the overall program, I think our grandparents could go to the program and recognize what was going on. I really do sometimes. It hasn't shifted that much. So, but the seeds of my evaluation journey were planted much earlier. With a colleague of mine, Don Hinkleman, we co-authored a book in 2011. So we started in 2008, 9, 10, and it finally came out in 2011, blending technologies in second language classrooms. And partly the issue with that book was how can we get more people thinking about how to blend technology. So this is 2011, so almost 15 years ago, 14, 15 years ago, we came up with these concepts. Because at the time, technology was set apart, or we still had the shadow of language learning labs, or people didn't bring their own devices to the room, for example. So we're interested in blending. But as I finished, or we finished this book, did all that technology integration ever make a difference? And after a while, this university, my university, around the world, language programs in general, spend a lot of money and resources on technology integration, but we don't know if it's ever made a difference. We have new methodologies, new teaching approaches, but we don't know if our investment has actually raised any levels or improved the program or improved student satisfaction. So this became a niggling question in the back of my mind. We did all this, did it matter? So then I started this book again with another set of 3 colleagues, Monica, Russ, and Catherine Rick. So blended language program evaluation. And again, this was about how to evaluate language programs using an argument-based approach. So again, for many of us in the room or online right now, think about it. Language testing, which was my original PhD area, was language testing. They started making proficiency guidelines and things. But virtually every year, they kept adding one more issue. So it wasn't just speaking, for example, but it became vocabulary. And then vocabulary became also vocabulary plus speed. And then vocabulary plus speed plus accent. Vocabulary plus speed plus accent plus gender. And more traits were being put on these frameworks. So people shifted to an argument-based approach to simplify, to cut through an increasing complexity, to cut through with an argument. In this book, what it did, it proposed that evaluation be seen as an argument, not as a premise. So think about it for a second. Argue with me right now that this is a good presentation. What kind of evidence would you gather? Who would you have to please? And so don't think about all the traits, my accent or my speed, the quality of the PowerPoint presentations. But what we really want to argue is what makes a good evaluation, or what makes a good presentation, what makes a good program. That's what this book set out to do. Argument-based approach. We adopted it from language assessment or language testing, moved it to language evaluation. Was it successful? It's been out there maybe 10 years now, plus or minus. Not really. Hasn't really made much of a difference. I've seen one publication, it wasn't my own. Somewhere in China, someone used an argument-based approach to look at technology integration in China, and that was it. So the reason I'm saying that, of course I got a publication, but it kind of keeps going on. So which then led to another niggling questions. So we started talking about sustainability of language learning programs. The problem with technology is that it comes and goes, and that people go back to old tried methods because they don't really want to upset the boat. And what we're really worried about in this book was how innovation takes place. So virtually at the end of every technology article, there's a section called professional development. And whatever happened? And that's what I was trying to think about. What might be the basis for this? Was about the problem was with integration, they didn't take people seriously. They put in more computers or more smartphones or more tablets, but they didn't equally spend the same amount of money on professional development. Nor did a lot of language teaching programs emphasize technology integration. They talk more about how to teach speaking, but not with an iPad. Does that make sense? In 2024, 2022, 2023, it's like, excuse me, how do you think people learning language? Oh no, don't worry about that. Just do 3 things in the classroom. So I started thinking about a wider variety of programs. This one was based in, as you can see, technology integration in English for academic purposes. So I started going beyond the, if you will, the university. So today's workshop, for those of you online and those of you here in the room, I want you to interrupt me or think, or let's start talking about how to make this a workshop. I don't necessarily want to give a lecture. I want to think about how we can make this a workshop. So please, both online, if someone's monitoring the online chat, or I'm not, but please, those of you in the room right now, just say, GRUBA, Paul, what's the deal? Or I don't understand. So let's make this a workshop. I don't want it to be a lecture. So, and in fact, I'll sit down. If no one's, I don't think there's a camera on me. So really, one of the things I want today is you in this room or you online. how can I help you become a language program evaluator or have any interest in this field? And I'll tell you why. It's because it's probably the most neglected field in language education and applied linguistics. My original degree is in second language listening, and I used to think listening was neglected. There's no listening compasses, there's no listening journals, there's no listening keynotes. Basically, in applied linguistics and language education, it's mostly about writing and speaking, as far as I can tell. Hardly anyone does listening theory. So, and now I'm thinking, oh, listening is pretty good. Evaluation is like nothing. It's a desert out there. So please, I want to help you today to improve your ability to select and justify design of theoretical basis for language program evaluation. My hidden motive is let's grow together. I want this field to start having some seeds. So again, I'm thrilled to be here in Hong Kong to help some of these ideas out. So please, it's an interactive workshop. Two key resources, which I use throughout the book. What's called better evaluation. So there's a huge field called program evaluation, and they're a very generous group of people. And they have a huge site called betterevaluation.org. Anything I talk about today, if you go to that website, they give all kinds of free resources, free training, they're very generous, unlike a lot of people in our field, I would say. They're a very generous group of people. The other book that I used heavily was Donna Merton and I think Kim Wilson, or something, or A.T. Wilson, Anna Wilson. Program evaluation theory and applied practice. So again, we'll talk about that, and that's what some of the designs. So again, it's a new field. I'm just going to briefly cruise through this, but to be honest, there's hardly any research in our field for language program evaluation. So program evaluation comes out of the early 1950s, 1960s. Basically, it comes out of Americans putting a lot of money into social justice funding, including new housing, new social justice programs, integration of racial equity, for example. And the American government spends millions and millions of dollars, a lot of effort to make a more just society throughout the 60s and perhaps the 70s. And the president at the time, Lyndon Johnson, called the Great Society. A lot of public housing, a lot of public welfare, a lot of public kindergartens, this type of thing. So then this large government funded program started talking about program evaluation, including, which our field can take a cue from, public medicine or public health has a huge tradition in program evaluation. So if we start thinking about language education as a public good, then you can see how far behind we are. If, for example, we want China to be more speaking English, then let's start improving the public good of language programs so that more people can have access to more English and more opportunity, more. You see what I'm thinking? This kind of, because I would think the Chinese people, the Chinese government have invested a lot of money into English education. Where is the evaluation component? Why, how are we fostering substantive change, and how do we know we're spending our money well? Does that make sense? This kind of feeling that came through. So this Bangalore project, it was the British were involved in language program or language education in India. So Bangalore, India, and two British academics went to evaluate the program. Again, in the spirit that British taxpayer money was being used to help improve English in India, and how could they improve it? And then, so language program evaluation takes off for about a decade. There's about 5 or 6 books that produced, and then it dies. That's it. Stop. There's a group of maybe 3 or 4 scholars that produce 5 books, literally. 1 or 2 Brits and about 3 or 4 Americans that stops. Nothing in India, nothing in. And then what's happening, this is a really interesting part. The British Council comes in and various American councils, Australians, and they call them the BANA countries. British, American, British, Australia, Australasian, North America. They have a growing industry called English language, ELT. To protect the reputation of the industry, they start having quality assurance measures because there's tens of thousands of people going to these BANA countries to learn English, and they don't know how to choose what a good program is. So there's an emphasis on quality assurance, mostly from, for example, the British Council. Does that make sense? It's not evaluation, it's quality assurance. And then in America, and then globally, also in the European Union, there's what they call an accountability movement. So it's not so much based on evaluation, but accountability. And for example, the successive governments, including the European Union, Americans, etc., if we're spending this money, can you account where the money went to? Can you show me any difference? So they call it the accountability movement. And then there's been some rise in evaluation or accountability or assurance because of this. And then recent scholarship, including my own, focused on technology integration, for example, and responding to government initiatives. That's it for us, for our field. That's it. There's no, as far as I know, mainstream program evaluation has grown to be a large interdisciplinary field. There's a lot of interest here in social sciences, public housing, public wealth, public health, everything from military spending. It's a huge and fascinating field. In Australia, the health education use it a lot for social justice. We have Aboriginal and Indigenous health programs. They're heavily into evaluation, program evaluation, with some fascinating, fantastic concepts that we could, as applied linguists, easily adopt. Some really good stuff on power, language. And when I read the mainstream stuff, there's not a lot of work on the role of language. So there's another opening for us in this room and online. There's a huge opening now for us to look at the role of language in the evaluation of public housing in Hong Kong. Hong Kong spends a lot of money on public housing. What's the role of language there? Think about it for a second. Do people understand or misunderstand, or is there turnover, or is there resentment? What's going on? So quality assurance is the dominant approach used in language programs. Again, think of the British Council wanting to assure non-English speaking students going to Britain that they have a quality program. That's really the dominant paradigm right now. And this is the provocative part. I looked at this the last 2 or 3 years. No journals, no conferences, no invited keynotes, no professional organizations talk about language program evaluation. That's either a good thing or a bad thing, but as I say to PhD students, it's a great opportunity or it's a career killer. And that's how, when I started doing listening theory, I thought the same thing. When I started getting into technology in the late 90s, I thought the same thing. And both have grown. When I started looking at social semiotics, they start growing, semiotic resources start growing. I would hope this would grow. So take a note here. No journals, no conferences, no professional organizations. Personally, I would think that Hong Kong U is positioned very well, for example, to start an organization or a unit on language program evaluation. Hong Kong in general, it's fantastic. Asia has a lot of resources, a lot of emphasis on quality education, et cetera, et cetera. It's a great opportunity, and also for those of you who are entrepreneurial, both in the room or online, it's a great opportunity to start your own consulting business. So let's keep going here. Research is sporadic and uneven. Again, there's no journals, conferences, keynotes, so there's no great research agenda in the field. There's no field actually. And there's few graduate subjects in applied linguistics, foreign language education, or TESOL. If we can look at Hong Kong University, or for example, is there any mention of language programming evaluation amongst all the other theoretical and all the other academics, amongst one of the world's leading discipline, universities? Is there any real mention of evaluation? At my university, University of Melbourne, there's a history. There's one subject that's taught every 2 years. That's it. I've never had a PhD student interested in language program evaluation. I've never, again, no composites journals, etc. I just want to say that the reason I'm reinforcing that so much is because it'll influence the rest of the workshop. So please understand this for a moment. When I wrote the book, I had to think of case studies because there's no published case studies. Think about that for your book, for your PhD. There's no published case studies in our field on X, Y, Z. So today's workshop is open. I'm not here to say I'm an expert. I'm here to say, please, let's try to start a fire together, at least get us a spark going. Now shifting to the title of the book. So design is a key word here, title. In a design methodology, developing a working solution to a problem that may only be relevant to a single program. Okay. Design science is intended to produce, communicate knowledge of general interest. So program evaluation and language program evaluation sits at a nexus between, for example, government funding agencies, commercial interests, and academics, right? The public here in Hong Kong is interested in public housing works. Where are the applied linguists, the role of language in public housing? For example, you can see where it's a nexus between policy, funding, construction, language, right? We're the linguists in public housing. Is it a language problem? Is it a cultural problem? What's happening there? I just want you to start thinking. So the results of design work are sometimes relevant only to local practice, just one single group or organization. In contrast, design science produces relevant to global practice. So for us here in Hong Kong, start thinking how this could be relevant to people in Nairobi, to people in Brazzaville, to people in Rio de Janeiro, so that i.e. a community of local practices to the research community. One of the problems we've had in quality assurance studies and any type of program evaluation is so specific that it's almost secretive. My university does quality assurance on its language programs. None of the results are ever made public, no data shared, anything. No research comes out of it, no publications, nothing. I can't tell you if the French program is any better than it was 30 years ago, even though my university has assessment or evaluation of the French program. I cannot tell you at my university that the French program is better than it was 30 years ago. They've integrated technology, they have better classrooms, they teach online. Is it any better? Yes.
Curious. So from the insider perspective, so is it like they can know like that kind of assessment or information is not revealed to the public? Then from the insider perspective, how do they actually assess the effectiveness or quality of
They don't.
Oh, let's just say like don't
They again, I'm trying not to be mean. They go through the motions. It's I would say it's a semiotic play or something. What do you call it? Performative. It's a performative act that says the University of Melbourne believes in the quality because our assurance, because our students want to go to a quality university. I'm being mean, but I think it's time for us to be honest, right? Language programs around the globe, there's no keynotes, no conferences, no research. Think about all the energy that's going into it. It's a desert, right? Think about it for a second. There's a lot of energy and time and prestige and money. We don't know. We don't know. Let's keep going. Evaluative thinking is at our core. So this is from a very famous guy, Michael Patton. So evaluative thinking at our core. So I wanted you to kind of get this too. Because when I teach language programming, I always almost every week I talk about this slide. Clarity about the inquiry purpose. So why are we asking about the French program at university? So why? Are we being performative? For its intended uses to be judged what quality criteria? So quality criteria, being explicit about what criteria are being applied. So this becomes very scary at the University of Melbourne to define things. A lot of academics, a lot of programs in general don't want things defined. They're like, no, she's a professor. She's always taught French 1. She's good. She's always been good. She won Teacher of Award in 2015, I think. And that's about it. Right? Making design decisions, here's that word, design decisions, which is what we're doing today. Okay. This is what's crucial. We got to start thinking we're evaluators. We're thinking what's quality, determining what constitutes appropriate methods, and selecting the following analytical processes, being aware of articulating values, ethical considerations, contextual implications, strengths, weaknesses, potential, or actual. And this is the problem, I think, with the field right here. It's much easier for me to go to Zimbabwe, study a language, and tell you about the use of the pronunciation. It's not controversial. Okay? In my own university, if I was to evaluate the French department, it's much more controversial and risky. So I always tell the students that I've helped in the master's program, language program evaluation is not for the faint-hearted, and they'll say that throughout program evaluation in general. You've got to have this clarity of purpose, forces clarity. And you've got to say, we're going to do this. Are we committed to this? We're committed to improving language at Hong Kong University. We are committed to improving the quality of our language program at the University of Hong Kong. Clarity. Okay, we're going to do this. So think about that. But the problem is this potential misinterpretations, misuse, or misapplication. Because people say, oh, so it's a bad program? No, it's not a bad program. We just need to improve it. Does that make sense? I always like the American Psychological Association. They're saying, the American Psychological Association, you don't need to be sick to get better. And I always like that phrase, actually. You don't need to be sick to get better. But people are afraid that I'm going to cause, if I go to a psychologist, that you're somehow crazy or mean or troubled. And I can say, no, my mental health is important and I want to be better at mental health. Oh, remember when mental health was a taboo topic and now we've made it more open? I think we have to do the same thing for our field. I really do. I think there's a parallel there. So our sincere and ongoing integration, here's the other thing. Throughout our work, we have to be constantly aware of the need to consult, integrate, and our primary stakeholders. So at the University of Melbourne, you mentioned the professors are there, the students are there, and the administration are there, all in the same room, talking about improving the program. So we go to the administration and say, well, a lot of the professors are saying we need more resources. The students are saying we need more time. And the professors are saying, I need more professional development. How are we going to solve that? So these stakeholders have to come together, the primary stakeholders. This is something different than a lot of, if you will, applied linguistics work. We really need to get together to discuss the design. So professors have to give up power to say, what's the best design? What's going to work for our program? Provide information, context employees and students. So the students get to see who's a good teacher. The students get to see how much the iPads cost. Oh, we're going to share with students. Yes, there's stakeholders in this. So this is that fear again. Involved, we have to integrate them. And this is very unusual for myself as an academic. If I'm going to write a book, and the most prestigious book is a single authored monograph, now I've got to integrate all kinds of people. So I'm losing power. Does that make sense? Data collection, interpretation, and creating recommendations. I'm going to now co-author with undergraduates. I've lost my prestige, right? Because the prestige, semiotic and mind university is single author monographs. And suddenly I'm like, no, there's a great Zen phrase I like. The garden, the soil does not say, I alone made the garden grow. It's like that phrase. I alone did not make this garden grow. So, and power. The key thing with us, and again, in academia, I can write a book and it goes on a shelf and I get success, I get prestige in a sense. With program evaluation, we want to change things. So we have to do, in a real way, how our research makes an impact towards improvement. Like in a real way, in an everyday way. Remember, we investigated this, we recommended, now we need the uptake. That's the toughest part. For those of us, myself in the room, if you've ever gone on a stint to try to improve your health or go to your diet or try a training, it's very difficult to change theory into practice. This is where we need to do, including this one, greater capacity development. And I'll talk about that throughout the rest of the day, but how can we also make people, like today's workshop, how can I help you become an evaluator? As part of my research, as part of my professional work right now, I want you to have greater capacity. So in my listening theory, no, it's only theory. I didn't make better listeners necessarily, but now it's crucial. It's at the core, sincere integration of primary stakeholders. Now I sincerely want my participants to be better listeners. I sincerely want the teachers to teach as best they can. So now let's get into methods, and I'll do this for fairly quickly. Then we'll have a little break, and then we'll have this workshops. These methods, I don't want to, it's a bit kind of funny, but post-positivism, again, really what it is post-positivism is concerned, we're taking methods that are easy, largely quantitative, if I will, and they can be checked by somebody. People in funding agencies like these ones. But your core, for you as a designer, what emphasis is placed on reputation? Now I want you to start thinking as a workshop now. You're working with prestigious, for example, kindergarten here in Hong Kong. How much is reputation important to them? And think about it like deeply, it's super important. So how important is it to be published in or government standards? For example, I'm at a public school here in Hong Kong. I must meet certain standards. And then is display of certification important? The reason this last question, because if you go to, for example, you're looking for an English school in Britain, they'll say approved by Accreditation UK. Or in Australia, they have this national evaluation assurance agency, English assurance agency. They'll say NIAS approved. And so I'm spending $10,000 to send my kid to Australia to learn English. I can say, yes, I feel happy. It's been approved. It's been certified. It's not a silly school. Does that make sense? What we're starting to think there. So it's efficient, quantitative focus. It's a checklist approach, and it often aligns with business or investor discourses. I want to say that because remember, stakeholders are at the core of what we're thinking. However, For negatives, there's minimal stakeholder environment. There can be surface analysis. There can be compliance ethos, not necessarily improvement ethos. See the difference? I comply, but I'm not worried about improvement. Does that make sense, everyone? I'm meeting the standard, but I'm not improving. There's little cultural change. It doesn't matter, we're meeting the standard. I don't care if my teachers are unhappy, we're meeting the standard. That unhappiness is some kind of funny qualitative research, whatever. Does that make sense to a business person? I don't care if the factory workers are unhappy. We need to make graduates. And limited basis for research. The research opportunities are pretty limited in the sense that you're just literally going through a checklist and saying, yes, they meet all the standards of the Hong Kong government. So an example is quality assurance language network. Again, I just want to say this is real world stuff. I just picked this up off the website. Provide opportunities for quality assurance and accreditation in English language education. I don't need to read all of that to you, but there it is on the slide, and I'm perfectly happy to share my slides throughout this presentation, and I'll give them to the School of Chinese here at the University of Hong Kong. So again, I just want to say, develop, explore, and share global on quality assurance. So there's that word, quality assurance. It's when I first started writing the book, I thought, I couldn't find the word evaluation. That's QA. QA comes out of industrial improvement, and it comes out of an industry perspective for industrial improvement. It doesn't come out of education. It comes out of industry, factory, engineering discourses. We, as a field, as an industry, have adopted industrial factory discourses and called quality assurance. It came out of, I think, maybe the Swiss or the British, and then attenuated by the Japanese, the QA, that every car would be better than the last car. Every motorcycle would be better than the last motorcycle because they checked little things all the time. But they did checklists and said, oh, next time, cut it 2 millimeters thinner, it'll be a nicer iPhone. That's quality assurance. We've adopted those discourses into our field, as if language education is an industry that creates standard models. That's why we're taking a kind of theoretical perspective. Accreditation and quality assurance scheme for English language teaching. And again, I just picked this off the website this morning. There it is. Assurance of quality to international students who are taking or planning to take English language courses. It does not mention teachers. It doesn't mention investors. It doesn't mention, it's talking about reputation. When I send my child to a school in Birmingham, I can say, yes, this is accredited by accreditation group. This dominates our field. Pragmatic and use designs, how much emphasis on practical visible outcomes. And this is the one used throughout higher education. It's prevalent in higher education. It basically adopts research methods into evaluation for the program. It's basically what it does. And really, particularly for applied linguists, they say, does it work? Is it real? Is this going to produce something? So it's flexible. There's a research basis. So a lot of researchers like this one because it imitates social science research. You talk to participants, you write it up, you do some analysis. Stop. The problem with this one, this little, I'll take a recommendation. Think about it for a moment. Myself, I won't accuse anybody else in the room or online. All the stuff I write about rarely ever is uptake. One of the reasons I stopped doing integration of technology, remember I wrote those books in 2011, my department never changed. None of my colleagues ever did more technology uptake. I never saw it in practice. And I just kind of want to say that there's a little uptake of recommendations, but researchers are happy with that. They traffic in understanding, not action. Researchers are happy with that. They're pushing theoretical basis, not action basis. In program evaluation, we have to do both. That's another difficulty we have. Because now I've got to get involved in action, not simply theoretical improvements. Very difficult as an academic, myself included. It may be secretive because Hong Kong University, University of Melbourne, my university doesn't necessarily want this stuff to be shared, that the French department is blah, blah. May induce resentment because the French department got evaluated, they got a lot more resources, and the German department didn't, for example. And academics being people, they say, oh, they got what I need or something. And it may have non-transferable results. This is only for Iowa State University. It's not for, it's so specific to American universities, it has no transferable results. Therefore, we don't produce research, we don't produce keynotes, we don't produce journals. It's almost secretive, right? But a lot of energy and money goes into these, and there's no research. There's no conferences, it's kind of wild, actually, when you start thinking about it. You mean the entire department got involved in this for 3 months, and there was no public research at a public university? No? Why? Carla does it, and again, start building a plan. It almost looks like it could be a start of a PhD. It very much looks like it. Have you done this? Have you done your background review? Have you talked to participants? Very, very similar to starting a PhD. This differs, I want you to say as a designer now, this differs then from, for example, a quality assurance. It's not a checklist. I go around in this room and I basically start interviewing you, and then we start doing kind of a social research program. But remember, I produce a lot of data analysis, but there's very little uptake of recommendations. There's no kind of push, and then I don't share it. The department or the school releases me for 6 months to do an evaluation of the program, and I don't publish anything. What? What do you say? Oh no, Paul did a great job. He interviewed everyone in the department. Oh, and? Oh, it was great. We can do that in another 5 years. That's kind of what's happening. Constructivists now, I want to start you thinking about heritage language programs. For example, the Tagalog community here in Hong Kong. You're invited as a language educator to help the Filipino community improve their language processes. You're very much a social justice person. You really want to help domestic workers here in Hong Kong. Again, as a designer, I want you to start thinking, oh, this is different than quality assurance. It's different than what the university resources have. Now I've got to be very, very much part of the Tagalog community. So I'm very sensitive to their community values. Very, very sensitive. Community-driven stakeholder involvement, use of methods, viable, and ownership of results. Ultimately, I don't own the results. The Filipinos must own the results. I must integrate the Filipinos in all my design decisions. Very different now from the first 2 designs. Does that start making sense to everybody? Why we're this kind of workshop we're talking about? Oh, I wouldn't use quality assurance with the Tagalogs. I would use quality assurance for a different kind of program. For this community, I would do this because I want you to start your own business and program language for their evaluation. And I want you to have a variety of clients and schools. And every time with your colleagues, you would have to make different design decisions. Does that make sense to everybody what we're kind of doing? It's uneven in the sense that communities are uneven. There's various people get involved in that. It's resource intensive. It can be sporadic. Be prone to biases in the sense that the Southern Chinese are different than the Northern Chinese. The South Sudan is different than North Sudan, but we're seeing them as the Sudanese community. No. The Sudanese don't see themselves as the Sudanese community. They see themselves as Northerners and Southerners. And the Chinese may do the same. Easterners and Westerners, Northerners and Southerners. Island, not island. You know, here we go. Mainland, not mainland. Here we go. Insider, outsider tensions. Here we go. Requires deep understanding of the program and the culture. which yourself, as a program evaluation, you may not have the energy to really get involved in that community. So it becomes kind of a tension for you. Remember, you're an evaluator. You can't continually enter Southern Filipino culture, but you don't really understand how it differs from Northern Filipino culture. But the Filipinos do, and you're like, "Man, that's going to take me a long time to understand, where the divide is and how they eat differently and use different greetings, and all this cultural stuff." Shirk talks about this again. There's the PDF. But again, heritage language have acquired the language, try to regain or improve their understanding, and motivated by connection to the language. Okay. And again, keys to success, given the outreach, prioritize, here we go, prioritize relationship building, plan to move at a pace, celebrate early and often, but here we go. And that's really yourself as an evaluator, very different than flying into London with a checklist and saying yes, 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 and a stamp it. Very different than being part of a university and saying, "Oh, I'm going to run this like most of my research projects. Now I really have to get involved in this community." And again, learners may not have access to instruction in their own primary language. So again, I'm in Australia. So in Australia, we looked at a Chinese heritage language program. So there's many Chinese migrants to Australia, different generations. Some of the grandchildren may not be able to speak to the grandparents. The parents literally start a Chinese language heritage program so that their children can talk to their parents. Does that make sense? But of course, the Chinese are very varied themselves. So there's all kinds of uneven interpretations of what should be emphasized in Chinese culture. Or for the outsider, say, "Oh yes, the Chinese school." But inside, it could be very different. That's where you need to start thinking. But really what I wanted to say was frame program with development with questions, not answers. Remember, we have to be super sensitive to the language and culture we're dealing in. And our last design, and then we'll take a break here. So the first three designs, right? Again, this is hopefully, this quality assurance, you get a checklist. Second one, you act as almost like a researcher. Third one, you get involved in the community, you start listening to what the community wants. This one, you come in with a very strong agenda of your own and say to yourself, no, language has a role in social justice. Language, as we know from various studies, has a complicit role in the support of power. So how can I help transform biases, racial inequalities, et cetera, et cetera? And how much social justice do I need? Is the French program neutral when it comes to issues of power? Are the French teachers neutral or not complicit when they don't talk about French colonial history in Africa? They don't mention it. Like the French were never in Africa? No, I'm not going to talk about that. Right? So here we go. This is kind of issues, right? What about real world concerns, sensitive to stakeholders? I'm putting this one because long-term vision, we got to be redressing long-term social gender power imbalances. And the way I speak helps address some of those balances, redress some of those balances. Okay. I start calling, rather than use the word girls, I use the word women, and I start embedding gender respect throughout everybody I talk to and teach that way, this kind of thing. However, what the problem is, there's abstract goals. What does it mean to be sensitive? What does it mean, justice, for example? Practical to measure, well, but let's talk about it, or is it? The business community thinks it's impractical. They're like, no. And we can see that with the recent American administration rolling back diversity, equity, inclusion. That's the recent administration. Because they say they're impractical. The business people don't like these things. So there's unfamiliar concepts to a lot of programs. In my program at University of Melbourne, the master's program did not mention social justice. There wasn't a core, there wasn't no subject called social justice in applied linguistics. So a lot of students are like, what are you talking about? I just want to be a language teacher. I don't want to worry about my history of the colonial French in Africa. I just want to teach French. How do you say tout parfait? Combien, combien, everybody, combien. I don't want to talk about Africa. I just want to speak French. Bias, uneven results, and it's difficult to determine success. There's one paper from Better Evaluation. It comes out of a thing. This is now the program evaluation people that are interested in language. The program evaluation people interested in language. The reason I took this as a representative for us is because the authors then set out 3 principles, how these principles might be integrated into evaluation practice. Very, very different than quality assurance. Think about it for a second. Principles in language education. Principles. Language is just as integral as social justice. Language is a tool for transforming thinking and empowering action. And multilingual spaces raise evidence. We're going to design our evaluation on that? Think about it for a second, how abstract that is to a lot of practical language teachers. Language teachers are like, no, I introduce pronunciation, and then we had a speaking practice, and we do an assessment. Now you want me talking about principles? It turns out there is, in fact, a huge body of work, a growing body of work in program evaluation called principles-focused evaluation. Our field has not adopted it, and we have not used it. For those of you, again, online and here in the room, it's just a YouTube clip from Michael Patton. It's an hour, but this book is fantastic. But if you're interested in Xiaofang and I were talking earlier, I think there's an American Association of Applied Linguists. They're emphasizing, for example, social justice. It's part of their conference theme. And I said to Xiaofang, well, how do they evaluate their programs? But I didn't mean that in a mean way, because this book has been out since 2011. So it's been a huge issue in program evaluation for the last 15, 20 years. So it is possible. And it's fantastic. It's great stuff. So quickly, and then we'll take a break. Post-positivist designs are widely used in the industry. They're largely quantitative with a quality assurance ethos. So you can get certified. The parents will know that they're spending the money to send their child to UK. Pragmatic designs are prevalent in higher education. These are familiar to academics, utilize mixed methods, and draw on research training. They're often resource intensive. They're often do not produce any research. It's wild. You take these highly trained academics with PhDs and make them evaluate, but they turn it into a research project. Partly because of their training, they have a blind spot and they don't foster any action. The report becomes the object. The monograph becomes the object, not the action. Constructivist designs are sensitive to local cultures, involve stakeholders, and encourage capacity development. So in the Tagalog community here in Hong Kong, I go and I work with the Filipinos for 2 or 3 years because I'm partly deeply engaged in heritage language for Tagalog. I would probably need a close Tagalog contributor or collaborator, but that's my thing, is to really bolster the maintenance of Tagalog here amongst the Filipinos, or in Australia, the use of Chinese in a Western country, for example. The fourth one, sorry, highlight social justice concerns, focus on principles, recognize stakeholders, and foster understanding. I actually did one of these at University of Melbourne. I ran a language program and I decided to do a principles focused approach. My teaching staff and the students didn't know what I was talking about. And I repeated it all the time, went over their heads. And I looked at this literature in my field on transformative and social justice at the time, and I said, well, I don't know who's doing it, because my crowd at a major university certainly have no uptake on it. So I wasn't quite sure principles and transformation is for somebody else, but not for our own language education, our own PhDs, our own. It's funny, I don't know quite what's going on actually. And let's take a break. So come back like 5-10 minutes. There's some snacks here that the School of Chinese has brought to us. And then again, I don't want this to be so much a lecture, but from now on, have a big discussion with some of these concepts. If you need clarity, of course, we can flip back through the slides and people online, if we can get them. I really want to start having a discussion like, oh, what would we do? How can we balance? And these designs can be porous. We could take a bit of this, bit of that, but what we really need to do though, and I'll end on this note, involve stakeholders and try to get recommendations that actually include programs and improve people's lives, which is different than research. So we're in a different kind of field now. Oh, this is applied linguistics, which is kind of wild actually. Oh, this is the applied part of applied linguistics. So 5-10 minute break and then have some snacks or take a little break or check your iPhone. iPhone break. It's been an hour. Someone's missing it.
Can I ask a question? Because I'm kind of wondering, why should we do language program evaluation such high risk for us personally? Because we could risk jeopardizing our relationship with colleagues. And why should we actually take on this role?
So for me, it's for example, like being a medical doctor. Think about this metaphor for a moment, and again, metaphors break down. I look at you one day and I'm very concerned about you, and I say to you, I really want to help you. There's the last time you went to a doctor and you say, Paul, don't hassle me. I say, actually, I'm concerned that our French program is kind of not doing that well. Paul, stop hassling me. And I've got to say to you sooner or later, sorry, I'm trying to help. So that's why I need the involvement of stakeholders. It's absolutely crucial that you say, yes, it's very prevalent in the consulting literature. Know when it's going to get better without involvement of stakeholders. Back to Xiaofang now. Please don't think you're a researcher and divorced from the community. You want to help the program improve, but you can't do it alone. You need your colleagues to say, yes, I understand. To be number one here in Hong Kong, we really should make a commitment to improving a viable, tangible commitment that has tangible outcomes. Same with social justice. Same with constructives. If we really want the Filipino community to feel warm, inclusive, diverse here is part of the Hong Kong demographics, then let's support them in a tangible way. So it's that kind of thing. But I think the difficulty for you and I is that we're researchers. We're thinking, oh, yes, I'm going to research you. No. I got to hold your hand and say, let's do this journey together. Let's talk about these designs. Let's talk to the stakeholders together. Let's talk to the department head together. Let's get the department head engaged in improving the program. And rather than, oh, it's okay. The students are still coming. So I think
maybe there's one thing I can share with you. Actually, in social science school, program evaluation is an official topic.
It's a huge field,
Yeah.
but languages don't do it.
Okay.
So that's why I wrote this book. So you would know it's a huge field.
So when you talk about mixed method, I'm not sure whether that I try not to downplay on your capabilities, but I'm not sure whether they've heard about mixed method or this kind of.
So program evaluation, as you know, takes in just everything. So mixed methods in that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the big umbrella.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we got to talk to the stakeholders, what they're capable of doing, they're capable of understanding. There's a case study that my students did. They went to the Chinese community and they started using, for example, Excel spreadsheets. And they said, no, the stakeholders in the community language heritage program did not want to use a spreadsheet. They didn't have Microsoft tools, they didn't have laptops.
But I mean, whatever that it can be used, right?
So they went back to a much more simple, like some more simple tool. So it's that kind of adaptability. It's pretty wild, isn't it?
Yeah. I can't quite get a grip of it why it can't be used.
Because, so I want to help improve the Chinese heritage language program. And I want to do capacity development. But in order for them to understand what's going on, we said we're going to use Excel and then we're going to use advanced statistics. Everyone's like, no, we can't understand this. Do we make it more straightforward and more qualitative, more grounded to what we're able to do because we can't keep up with what your fancy university people do. So it's appropriate technology is probably a good buzzword. Does that make sense? If I come in from the university with all these theoretical constructs, they don't know what I'm talking about. They don't trust me as I'm not sensitive to the Chinese or I'm not sensitive to working parents. And because I'm at the university, I have all day to learn just that. Because when I leave, I want the uptake of recommendations. They say, well, we can't uptake because we can't maintain that level.
But actually, do you distinguish between like process-based evaluation and outcome-based evaluation?
Well, that's what we can talk about.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why exactly, this is why rich design is the name of this workshop. Well, what I ultimately would love for us to think about is what's the role of our stakeholders. Do we have, I think for a community language program, I would have process. And that put on the slide. Train them. Oh, this is evaluative thinking. You and I are trained at critical summarizing information, analyzing data. It's not the easiest for the truck driver who wants his son to learn Centennial, right? He's like, what are you guys talking about?
They still want to achieve something. But what that something is about.
So here we go. Perfect. Yeah, now you start to get the feeling of what today's workshop is really about. Are we meeting our stakeholders at versus, the businessman who wants to run a test preparation, he wants it to be the best in Hong Kong. It's a huge number of students who want to study for the language proficiency test. So he wants return on his investment. He wants to say we're the number one in Hong Kong. Anyway, it's interesting that, again, in social sciences, there's a mainstream program evaluation is huge.
Yeah.
Languages we almost literally never consider it. But we're a multi-billion-dollar industry. Multi-billion-dollar global industry, and we don't talk about improvement. Multi-billion-dollar global industry. that affects millions of lives. We don't, we're more worried about pronunciation.
Stakeholder, you think people about the product. So
Which program now? Now we gotta start getting more straight.
things like a language program at school, like for the kids, they will care more about the product,
Yes.
and hence they will be more amiable to the idea of accredited course,
Perfect.
right?
Perfect. So then we can design for them. I'm not being judgmental of what they want. I just want us as designers to know what we're doing. Because I don't want you going in thinking, oh, you're gonna interview everybody and make qualitative. That would be a fundamental flaw on your part. So now you're starting to think, oh yes, this is what they want, the checklist. So therefore you would adopt the postpositivist methods. You would say, our methods are cheap. 67%. Yeah, I learned in this book not to be judgmental. I just want to make sure that we reach stakeholders. Because of course, in our industry, we need investors. Of course, we need business people. Of course, we need researchers. Of course, we need diversity. Yes. Well, maybe let's just get started informally and and again, please talk. There's no, again, I just wrote this out. This is my feeling for the workshop. You're an evaluator or you start a consultancy company here in Hong Kong. You're not going to be judgmental. Of course, you want to survive and you want to grow your business and you want to grow your reputation. You're literally working with the 5 or 6 people in this room. You got to get contracts. So our aim today is what's the design philosophy? What design are we going to choose for which person? For which group? That's really, if we can achieve that in the next 40 minutes, fantastic. And I think it's worth your time to start thinking, oh, okay, I can start making sense of this because I don't want you thinking program evaluation is just one size fits all. No, no. There's all kinds of considerations. So design choice is not a given. As critical thinkers, I want you simply to justify your choice. That's the only criteria today, really, so that you can advise, produce outcomes and outputs, can lead to tangible improvements. Because again, I'm paying you, your consulting company, to improve my kindergarten. I have a lot of rich international parents who want a better kindergarten. And I'm gonna pay you $100,000 to make sure the bilingual program is effective. Literally, right? Literally. So literally. I want you to start thinking this way. Oh, I can get $100,000 contract from St. Joseph and Mary International Bilingual Program to, yes. There's no correct answers. Discuss question. There's no leading people in the field. I think this is partly a joke and partly not a joke. The expert in language programmation is me, and I'm alone. No journals, no conferences, no presentations. There's very little in this field. So again, this one, let's start talking about it. It's a competitive market. There's a lot of course, Hong Kong is a changing demographic, but it's a very competitive market. There's a rise of English as a prestige language. They're discerning status conscious parents. They're very discerning. Some are very rich, and some are very hard, and they're business people, they're financiers. Very, very young students, as you know, from a kindergarten, from 3 to 5 years old, they get to 6 years old at points. It's labor intensive, and some of the investors are thinking maybe that's one of the problems here, or maybe we need more staff. The parents are certainly willing to pay for more staff if it's going to help the children. So it's not an issue. Resources are not an issue here. There's bilingual and immersion sessions, so tell me, let's think about it for the next 5 minutes and then we'll move on to a different group. Over to you. What design would you choose? Social justice, quality assurance, community? Remember, this is jet setters. Maybe they're a certain kind of community. They're transnational, transcultural. They see themselves as elite culture. Maybe there's a lot of parallels to them in the Tagalog. I don't know. Help me here. Or would you come in as a university research project and say, oh, I'm going to interview everybody and analyze the data? What do you reckon? What do you think, as we say? Anybody? $100,000 contract. 6 of us in this room. We got 3 months to do it. We're each going to be paid 20K each. It's not too bad. It's only one part of our busy lives. We're going to spend, it's only one part of our consultancy business. It's a real contract. Got some fancy PhDs in the room. The fancy parents want fancy results. What are we going to do? We got 3 months, 100K contract. Which design? This is our first meeting of the design group. What are we going to do? We all know St. Catherine's International School. What do you think? Anybody?
Setting up our goal.
And which is
Discussion.
with the stakeholders, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Does that make sense, everybody? First thing, yeah, perfect answer. First thing we need, again, remember we're a small consulting company. We've got to meet the primary stakeholders. Who are they now? Who would be the primary? All the people, they fly to Macau, they fly to Riyadh, they fly to Los Angeles. Who is going to represent this people? Now, this is a crucial question, sir.
They have to like
So again, part of language program evaluation or program evaluation in general, they may not have that, and I've got to tell the organization to then elect the parents to talk to. They may not have that. But think about it for a moment. That's now delayed my contract. Remember, I got to deliver a report by May 30th. And how long do you want them to get back to you to have this parent organization? Because I've still got to deliver my contract May 31st. And I don't know who to talk to. How long are you gonna give them to say, please give me 10 parents to talk to 5 parents? How long? What do you think?
idea, to be honest.
Yeah. Neither do I, but anybody in the room? But anybody here involved in this culture? So the management people come to work every day, I can get them, but this other stakeholder group is very difficult to get. They fly to Saudi Arabia, Johannesburg, Los Angeles. They're big people. But I've still got to deliver my contract, my $100,000 contract by May 31st. So I just want you to start thinking which designs. Well, again, people are busy and they're so used to outsourcing it. How much is this going to cost me? Thank you. I don't have time for this. You know. Okay. So again, for us as a consulting company, we're going to propose there's an online WeChat or some type of program that we can somehow interact with. Okay. These are the kind of design decisions I want to make. Our plus design, we're allowing parent voices. Our negative is that we may be excluding powerful people because they're too busy. I just want you to start, again, we're just having a discussion. There's no correct answer, but I want you to start thinking, this isn't research. This is grindy. Like, so you've got to get in there and you've got to make sure that the voices are heard. You have got to go, or we as a consulting company have got to get in there and hear the voices of the primary stakeholders. Very different than research. Because what I want to say, and again, I'm not trying to embarrass you, but the structure may not exist. It may exist, it may not exist. If it's an existing structure, I also have to get people who are outside the existing structure. Does that make sense too? Since the existing structure may only want a certain conservative view. So I've got to ask other parents too, who may be more innovative, but not outside the inner circle. Does that make sense? They don't wear it. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? I just want you to start thinking like an evaluator. Oh, I've got to get all those to get kind of a voice. And I also have to be discreet, ethical, respectful. What kind of questions? Now, what is our goal? So now we've got a mechanism. What's our goal? What do you think? What are the primaries? What are they likely to tell us?
In some sort of like this book, second language proficiency standards.
Okay. But remember, again, there's very young students. They're 3 to 5 years old. So we may not be able to test them. So again, start thinking but how that standard will be very nebulous. It's not going to be IELTS for 5-year-olds. So we got to start thinking of other ways that we can ask teachers about student satisfaction and how the teachers encourage children to speak as English or Chinese as much as possible. Okay. So we got to start thinking outside of our field almost. Start thinking, no, this isn't an IELTS test. This is what are some other issues though? So we got, again, this is just kind of design decisions. I just want us to start thinking or this is only a workshop to start thinking, this is some of the issues that come up. The problem with us as consultants is going to be twofold. We're not experts in prestige language kindergartens. We need probably, we probably need an insider guide. So my suggestion, and again, just in the interest of time here, I would probably ask the kindergarten to assign me one parent and one administrator and one teacher to be my core advisory group, just 4 of us. I need someone who's going to be culturally sensitive to help me guide questions And that'll be my primary advisory group. There's only 4 of us, one primary stakeholder group. One teacher, one parent, one administrator. We're not judges, but we're helping each other understand the culture of the kindergarten so that I can help improve. The reason I need to do that is because I have a contract due May 31st. And I also have to keep paying you all the time. And we gotta get various contracts. Does that make sense, everybody? So I need to kind of be efficient. I don't have time for them to create a teacher association. Anyway, that gives you an idea of what's happening. Myself, again, when I was thinking about my own question, I was thinking the first report could be a preliminary quality assurance report. And the second report, if I would extend the contract or extend the consultancy towards more of a constructivist. Does that make sense, everybody? I'd have a 2-stage contract. First one, quality assurance, to address the issue of prestige or certification. The second one is constructivist, to address concerns with culture, what they want from St. Catherine's, how much religious education. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. Fantastic. Anybody online have any questions? Let's keep going then. Okay. What's happening here? Again, people are time pressed. There's an investor group from Shanghai. They put a lot of money into online test preparation. My students, though, I have little direct contact, but there's plenty of data. There's all kinds of use data, or they call it big data analysis. There's frequent student turnover. There's so much competition in this area. And everybody knows, I've told the investors already, it's very difficult to alter an embedded approach. Students have a certain mindset, and also the teachers have a certain mindset. But the investors are willing to give us another $200,000 this time to make sure that their online test preparation is quote unquote the best. Give me some design choices. Again, real contract. You may be kind of like, oh my God, this isn't applied linguistics, but it sure is. This is real money. It has everything to do with teaching, has everything to do with learning, has everything to do with technology, has everything to do with social justice. Everything. What are you gonna say? Anybody? Yes. Very good. Does that make sense, everybody? So now Xiaofang, I hire her. She's on our consulting team to be a big data analysis. She has literally 60 gigabytes worth of data that's been produced in the last 2 weeks on this platform. And now I'm going to be very pragmatic, and I'm going to say, could you give us a very strong fine-tuned analysis of big data analysis? The reason I put this example in, you as a language program evaluator probably need to bring in different expertise from different industries, different technology providers, for example. So I would, Xiaofang is in my consultancy company, but I would give her $50,000 to find a subcontractor to do the big data analysis. Again, for this workshop, again, I want you to start thinking, oh, yes, I have to please the stakeholders. the stakeholders are very transient, but they do leave behind traces of data. So in fact, they participate in fact in very, very visible ways. So as a language program evaluation, I have to think outside the box and be innovative. I start thinking, I've got 60 gigabytes of data every week. How can we mine that to produce a report to tell the investors about lags for login time, or how to get subscription to time on task, which is a concept in applied linguistics. And then I take some of my applied linguistics thinking, put it with the big data analysis, and come up with a comprehensive report for the investor group. Does that make sense, everybody? And again, I want you, for my PhD students, I would say, and again, think about transdisciplinarity, because you need to be able to talk between business people, tech, big data analytical people, and language teachers who design the task. You're the one who's part of this consulting company, and you need those kind of skills. But it's a money in it for you. It's a $200,000 contract. This is our first one. If we do well on this one, does that make sense, everybody? I want you to start thinking like this, like, oh, really? Yeah, really. We could bring together teams. Okay, let's keep going. 20 minutes and then we'll. This one, here in Hong Kong, Home Affairs Department. They have money. They're publicly sponsored. It's taxpayer money and, for example, maybe even other money, right? Facilitate the integration of members. So here we go. And I italicize the facilitate the integration. The reason I wanted this one, and again, this is right off their website. Now, our goal isn't language proficiency, but it's integration. Give me some advice now. Help me. I know you're all are, trained in, for example, languages is our primary concern here in the School of Chinese and education, school languages and things. But the Home Affairs Department wants us to facilitate integration. What do we do? They want us to be small classes, but I don't know, is it language or is it not language? But is language part of integration? So this is the kind of. Again, let's start with the first question. Who's our primary stakeholders here? So very this question good. So this is another $200,000 contract, but they want it in 2 months. The minister, who's got to make a decision by June 1st, whether to keep funding this program. Is it meeting its needs? There's pressure on us, but it's a big contract for our small consulting company. And the minister wants to know, have we been spending the money here in Hong Kong, or should it go more to sewage and water control systems rather than ethnic integration? The minister is not completely convinced that these programs are effective. They kind of, what do you think? So I got 2 months to get this report done. Okay. So tell me more specifically, who are you going to contact? Because as soon as we get out of this meeting, we're going to assign tasks to everyone on the team. And 2 days ago, 2 days from now, we're going to meet again and say, have you contacted? You're going to say, and it's a great idea, but I want to know the reality. I'm paying your salary to come back with this data, and I want, and again, this is the design, the original design brief, right? The minister wants to know these programs should be cut. We got $200,000 in 2 weeks. Be in contact literally. No, literally. No.
Is it possible to
Yes. How are we going to do it efficiently? Remember, we only got 2 months. I'm just being, I want us to have a sense of reality when we talk about program evaluation. It runs throughout that literature in program evaluation. There's a field, a subfield called ROE, research on evaluation. But the bulk of the field is it's very, very, I would say it's actually at the core of applied linguistics more than applied linguistics is the core of applied linguistics, if I can say that about that. What would you do? I would contact, again, just cutting to the chase, I would try to contact there must be some sense of ethnic affairs council or ethnic advisories council or maybe even church leaders or mosque leaders or Tagalog community. I would start trying to contact ethnic communities, leaders in those, because again, the minister, or I'm thinking politically, the minister's wants me to know that I've contacted the Saudi Arabian social community in Hong Kong, that kind of thing. So I would ask you, as part of this meeting, I would say, could you look at the ethnic affairs directory and maybe contact Home Affairs Department, some of our contacts there to get a list. That makes sense. I want us to start thinking. As far as students, anybody, how would we find them? How are we going to find them? Through teachers, yes. Okay. And the same way with teachers. So we may, because of this sensitive community, we may want to ask the teacher if we could spend 15 minutes of one lesson to come talk to them to ask 3 questions. Does that make sense? Because they're going to meet Tuesdays 11 to 12, and we say, we'll give you a $50 book voucher for every student if we can come talk to the class for 15 minutes between 11:45 and noon. I'll give every student a book voucher. Does that make sense? I want us again. So 3 of us go to the classroom. One person's going to be a facilitator, 2 people are taking notes. We'll get 15 minutes. Quickly, what kind of questions would you ask? And then we'll move on to the next kind of discussion. Got 15 minutes, 3 questions, that's all the time. It's going to cost me $50 voucher for every student. What 3 questions would you ask that the minister will resonate with? Come on, you're fancy researchers. You're social sciences. You're PhD students.
something like how do you
Yes, because that's the key, right? Facilitate integration. Yes, yes, perfect. I'm glad you said that because I didn't want, are you more proficient in how, so how does this help you facilitate? Next one, what's the next question? Could you give me an example of facilitate? How you've integrated, how this course is helping you? And it's a very powerful, ministers love examples. You know, Susie was a local blah, blah, and now she's blah, blah. The third one, what's the third question? Improvement or how can we go forward? Right? Does that make sense? How has this helped you so far? Give an example. How can we improve? Very straightforward, everyone improve. And I hand out the $50 vouchers and I go to as many classes as possible. Next bit of advice, there's 6 of us in this room. We're gonna change the team every time. Why? sometimes I'm gonna facilitate, sometimes you're gonna facilitate, sometimes you're gonna facilitate, sometimes I'm gonna take notes. Why? Why would I do that? Some people may react strongly to my semiotic markers. And some people may react more favorably towards your semiotic resources. Or, yeah, people are people. But I want to spread that and not have everything, oh, it's all reactions to this semiotic resource. You know, literally. So I want to spread our semiotic resources because we're multilingual group. This one, what do you think? This is, now we have a different kind of crowd. What are you thinking? Social justice in this program. Transformative. That's interesting. It's interesting. So defend your choice, justify your choice. That's why we're here.
Like the earlier, like there was a the design earlier that actually emphasizes social justice.
Okay.
The language is not the language itself. It has for a kind of meaning. So I just felt like from the first description, the role of language is equal to the content. So I think like maybe also that's also a way for them to see like or to feel
Yeah.
Just social justice or equality.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. But equal, I meant equal in the sense that when I worked in engineering, language is invisible to many people. Many of us in this room were very concerned with accent, speed, even word choice. But business people or engineers don't necessarily care sometimes. They're like, whatever. Does that make sense? But I can see a social justice take on the sense where we say there's a principle-based design. Our principles are make money, spread, capacity building, and facilitate international investment. I can see that actually as a radical choice for. What about reputation? What do we do with that? Because they're very, very sensitive. I heard today that Hong Kong University is going to start a business school. They're going to be very sensitive to reputation. But I can see social justice in business is certainly a huge part of that. Could be their brand. HKU's brand could be ethics in business. HKU's language program could be social justice through business. NGOs, there's certainly a huge role for that. Hong Kong has a unique opportunity to raise up. Any other designs? What do you think? Quality shoe. Could be one, yeah. Or we may, again, it's a big contract, there's always going to be pressures to get the deadline, but we may want to say, let's do a QA and then a social justice. A two-pronged, two design choice. And extend the contract and tell them, phase one will be QA, second one will be transformative. Fantastic. Sounds like a good solution to me. It sounds fantastic. Again, we're worried about ourselves as a consulting group being innovative. Remember, we're academic consultants, and that's how we present ourselves. We want justified designs. We want to go forward. We want to get paid the 400K. One last one, I think. This one, we've kind of thought about this one already, but what I wanted to say, I got this again off of the internet. So 130,000 Filipino Tagalog speakers and the largest ethnic minority here. We saw, there can be signs of Tagalog here and there throughout Hong Kong. Community wants to preserve language and culture. Of course it does. There's many children amongst this community. 130,000 people, there must be a good 10,000 children, there must be, right? I don't know exactly, but that's a lot of people. Fewer resources, volunteer lab, and no set curriculum. This is the problem for us as designers now. A lot of us will come out of very disciplined language programs or even governmental programs will say, no, you have to be level 1, level 2, level 3. And I'll say, no, I just want my kid to be taught to the grandparents. Or we're moving back to the Philippines in 2 years. I want them to be able to come back to the classroom. Okay. And who's going to pay us this time? It's an NGO. It's a local Christian organization. Maybe the Catholic Church wants us to help foster, and because there's a sense of despair in the Filipino community, they want us to help foster pride in speaking Tagalog rather than see it as a deficit. They want us to. It's our design. What do you think? It could be any one of the 4 designs, right? I mean, think about it for a second. Right? It could be QA in a sense of you have to get the NGO, or it could be the pragmatic one where we want practical solutions to give it a curriculum. Or it could be the constructivist one where we want to reach out to the community and make sure that we embrace Filipino culture and values. Or we could think of transformative social justice. Which one? And it could be any one of them. That's why we're having this design talk in our consultation group before I assigned you each task for the contract.
Anyway,
Preserve language and culture. Right? I'm worried about my son becoming too Hong Kong. I want him to have a. My son came home the other day and said he was embarrassed to be Filipino. Think about it for a second. So that's what we're evaluating there. How can we instill a sense of, literally a 9-year-old boy's coming home saying, oh my God, I wish I was Chinese. I wish I was Hong Kong. I feel so embarrassed. And I say to my son, we're going to move back to Manila in 2 years. We'll have enough money to buy a house back in after 2 years, 5 years in here. That's why we came to Hong Kong, was to earn enough money to get back. So it's along those lines. My feeling is the community, because community will be very important, the constructivist design. My problem is it's gonna take 2 or 3 staff members. Again, I'm very pragmatic here. And I'm worried about, we've also got a few other contracts. We got the business Chinese, we got a few other contracts in our consulting group here. I can't release you too much. So what I'm gonna ask this community to do is we're gonna train somebody to take this over. So I'm gonna assign one of you in our consulting group to help train this person to be a co-evaluator with us. They've got to give us, they may not have money, but I've got to do capacity development. Does that make sense to everybody? So I'm going to release one of you 1 day a week to train 2 or 3 of these Filipino community members to be evaluators. That's all I can give for the NGO. They've got to do the rest of the work. On that note, I need someone this room who's very good at understanding all this, in order to be able to train data collection, what a curriculum is, what it means to preserve a culture. These are all nebulous concepts, but they float around in our field, right? Should they teach pronunciation or should they teach vocabulary? Does that make sense? That's my thinking. The NGOs, the Catholic Church is only getting this 50,000 for this contract. That'll give me enough money to release one of you one day a week to train some tag along people from the community. That's all I can speak. See, you start to get a feeling for language program evaluation. It's kind of interesting area, actually. Wrapping up, so design choices, you can see, again, I hope this workshop's helped you. I think it has. It's helped me kind of start thinking, oh, yeah, it's all kinds of considerations. Ideally, again, we keep stressing this today's workshop. It's all about primary stakeholders, but they're not necessarily easy. Those busy parents from the bilingual kindergarten are going to be very difficult to get. But also the investors from Shanghai are going to be difficult to get, so et cetera, et cetera. But what this has done, these kind of things, has made our values surface. As we start working together as a consultancy, we're going to be much quicker at this, and this is where we can train each other and help each other make design decisions. But this has always got to be the initial conversation. It's stakeholders and design. So that's a good lesson for you. On that note, is my final plea. Evaluation, language program evaluation just needs you. So really think about it. This gives you a little taste, but think about doing it in some small way, even if you with an NGO or with a local school or something, and try to get it published. It's kind of radical to say that, but this. Raise your hand at the next conference and say, excuse me, I just heard a lot about social justice. Can you tell me what success looks like? Most of all, I think we together can help foster improvements, substantiate claims, and ensure long-term growth and sustainability. Personally, I think if we don't start doing this, someone else will. That makes sense. This is what happened in public health. The medical people said we're too busy to do the evaluation, and the bureaucrats came in and said, oh, we'll evaluate you. We'll give you a bunch of accountants. And the health people said, no, we know about public health, so we'll start training public health people to be evaluators. I think the same is going to happen to us. It's a multi-billion-dollar global industry. Someone wants us to get there. If we don't do it, someone else is going to do it. I really, honestly, so it's a plea from my heart about this very point. So many thanks again, and this is the end of it. Thank you very much. And thanks for putting up with it. Thanks for coming today. I know it's not the easiest topic. I deeply appreciate it. In all honesty, it's a plea for like, please, somebody do something. So thank you, HBU, and also you specifically for city. And thanks for the people online. And there's some snacks. Get that Russian chocolate for you.
I hear language program evaluation. I during my master's study, I do have touch on something like assessment, but not really the program evaluation.
So in our field, no other field does this. Our field conflates. I would say conflates. It's a big word. Language testing with language program evaluation. I don't know why they do it. I've argued with them, and I was like, "What are you doing? No one does." They're like, "No, they're very similar. Assessment and evaluation are very similar." So the only place this is mentioned is at language testing research conference. It's not mentioned in TESOL, it's not mentioned in the Public Linguistics Association. But this LTRC, they call it Language Testing Research Conference, it's in Bangkok in 2 months, I think. They're gonna have one of their workshops on impact evaluation for the first time. as one of their stars is to be impact evaluation. But that's, please again, think in your mind, no keynotes, no comments, professional positions. If I can, again, I don't want you to be sorry for me, but the book was so long. I could be sitting there one day going, oh my goodness, I gotta make up everything for the substantial part of this book, because it doesn't exist. Because I was taking theory from program evaluation and imagining the Chinese language program in Australia that needed evaluated. So luckily, part of my background is creative writing and journalism. It was wild. I was like, oh my God, this is a PhD. There's no way that could be accepted. And the publisher was like, I guess it's okay. I was like, I guess it's okay. It's pretty wild. I had to make up, they say creative nonfiction. So I had to draw on everything I could think of. I look at these cases. There's nothing published. Think how the business English is, there's nothing.
What would you recommend? I think that because we need to do some like baby steps to empower it. But
What I would do is, if you have any connection to a language program, become an insider evaluator and then learn. I would probably talk to the head of school or head of, so that you don't foster any type of resentment. For example, if I was at HKU, then try to, that book, with Cynthia Ellicott, we had to anonymize things as much as possible. And we had people kind of understand what we were doing as researchers, but not fully. And we kept assuring everybody that because we were talking about sustainability and how they kept failing. That book is a real eye opener. That sustainability book that I co-authored with. We didn't want to embarrass anybody. So your number one thing is very, that first quote, focus on clarity. What do you want out of it? What can you tell the primary stakeholder, whoever is in charge of the program you're interested in, how you can help foster improvement? Because for me, having written the other book on program evaluation, the blended language program evaluation, the first page it says, I'm not here to prove how good your program is, but how to make it better. That has to be the message. But people are very hesitant. And here's my metaphor. I say to you, you don't look well. Could you come to my office and get on the scales? And I want to check your blood pressure and your weight. You say, no, I'm too embarrassed. I put on a few kilos and I'm like, but I want to help you. That's what's happening in the field right now. And somehow I've got to build enough trust with you to say, I really do want to check your weight and your blood pressure. My apologies. I do physically have to touch you. And I know it's embarrassing, but it's only going to be a minute. Then we're going to have a conversation about it. But our field is hesitant to get on the field. It's hesitant to come to the office. It's almost like mental health was 5 years ago. I can't say, oh, I felt depressed yesterday. Pulse, travel. Oh. So maybe look for mental health, how they've kind of mainstream mental health. But I saw an advertisement here in Hong Kong the other day. It's okay to seek help. I think we need this message in our field. And I think that's, again, it's the American Psychological Association. You don't need to be sick to get better. Dear French department.
Borrowing concepts from mental health, I wonder whether you can suggest some issues like individual differences and extra previous variables, something like that.
And appropriate designs we're talking about,
Yeah.
and intrusiveness and respect, primary stakeholder. Well, thank you. I'm just,
Thanks everyone for coming along.
yes, thank you. And thanks to the online people.